Hello, my name is Linda Mordosky with Customer Advanced Engineering. This is Module 2 of a 5-set series, Configuring UCCE for Cisco Interaction Manager. Going back to our configuration checklist, in Module 1, we configured a network VRU, our agent PG, and we installed and configured our media routing PG. In Module 2, we'll configure an application instance, a media class, our media routing domain, and then we'll configure our application path. An application instance represents a single software application that has been integrated with the ICM software. You set up an application instance through the ICM Configuration Manager. You will configure one application instance for each integration. First, we must establish an application ID and an application key password that identifies this integration. Note, CIM doesn't actually use an application key password, so enter any unique 4-digit value here. The application type should be set to Other. The permission level should be set to Read Only. A media class describes the type of request you want to set up for routing on the ICM software. We will need to configure one media class for each media type in our deployment. The system will automatically create a Cisco_voice media class for you. Media classes can be shared across the entire UCCE implementation, and also note media class names are case sensitive. Remember I noted that media class names were case sensitive? Well, it's very important when you create your media class to follow the naming convention that I have here. Create one media class, CIM_BC. The next media class will be CIM_EIM. Next, create CIM_outbound. Now go ahead and create another media class, CIM_WIM. For callback and delayed callback, we will be using the system-generated Cisco_voice media class. CIM will map the media classes that we just defined in ICM in a properties file. The properties file is located on the file server in the CIM eService config IPCC directory. This is why it is so important that when you create the media class names in ICM that you use the correct format. Now let's take a look at the media class attribute. Be sure to fill out the attributes tab on each one of the media classes that we have configured today. Under task for life, this is a connection timeout in seconds. This is the number of seconds after the connection goes down that OPC waits before automatically ending all tasks in this MRD that it is reporting on. On the start timeout, this is the number of seconds an agent peripheral gateway will wait for a begin task or an offer task message from the application after it receives a pre-call message for the task from the router. If this time expires, the agent PG discards the pre-call, makes the agent not routable, and sends agent not routable message to the application. Think of it almost as a ring no answer timeout for your multimedia. The max duration is the number of seconds that OPC allows a task in this MRD to live. If OPC does not receive an end task message for a task in this MRD within this time period, it automatically ends the task. Don't confuse this with queuing. This is the total duration of the task, not just the queuing piece. The ICM software uses media routing domains, MRDs, to organize how requests for different media are routed. An MRD is a collection of skill group and services that are associated with a common communication medium. ICM uses an MRD to route a task to an agent who is associated with a skill group and a particular medium. Before you can configure your applications to use the ICM as a routing engine, you must first establish MRDs in the ICM software. Create one MRD for each media type. Create an MRD_BC, MRD_email, MRD_outbound, MRD_WIM. Associate each MRD with its corresponding media class. You do not need to create an MRD for callback or delayed callback. These two media types utilize the Cisco Voice MRD. So by now you should have 4 MRDs created, and note, you must have all MRD and media classes configured for the PIM to go active. Let's first talk about interruptible. We'll talk about calls in queue on the next slide. So if interruptible is checked, this indicates that any task that belongs to this MRD can be interrupted by another task belonging to a different MRD. Say, for example, setting interruptible to checked for email MRD indicates that any task in email MRD can be interrupted by another MRD task, say voice or chat. So interruptibility is associated with the MRD rather than the agent. An agent's ability to receive more than one task is always determined by the concurrent task limit set for that agent in that MRD. The concurrent task limit may vary from agent to agent. The concurrent task limit is set for the agent in CIM. CIM informs UCCE about the agent's concurrent task limit for the MRD when the agent logs in every time. UCCE keeps track of this limit for that agent for the entire duration that the agent is logged in, and increments and decrements this value based on handling or completing the task routed to him. The other attributes, calls in queue, call per type, max time in queue, these values which will be held in the router's queue for a specific MRD. These attributes are not related to interruptibility or agent task limits. Under calls in queue max, this is the maximum number of activities or calls allowed to be in queue for the selected media routing domain. The suggested default value is 5,000. If this is left blank, then the system does not limit the activities. The max per call type is the maximum number of calls allowed to be in queue for a specific call type within the selected routing domain. In addition to these two settings, you should also be aware of a following registry setting in the router which determines the total number of simultaneous calls allowed in queue by the router. Once this limit is reached, further attempts to queue a call will fail. The default value is 10,000. The max time in queue is the maximum number of seconds a call is allowed to be in queue for the selected media routing domain. If you're going to use max time in queue, then it is very important that the values on the CIM match this value here. We'll talk about that on the next slide. After activities are processed by Unified EIM, the External Agent Assignment Service changes the activity substatus to 4105. This means ready for Unified CCE routing and sends a request to Unified CCE for further processing. If the same activities continue to remain in this substatus for a delayed period, various options exist to have the External Agent Assignment Service retry routing of such activities through Unified CCE. Option 1 is to set the max wait time for each integrated queue. The EAAS will send a new task for activities that exceed this max queue time. Step 1 is to run a SQL query on the EIM active database. As the query shows here, you're going to do a select queue ID and queue name from the EGPL_routing_queue table. Here I have the results of the query from step 1. If you will note, the queue ID of the MRD_EIM queue is 1001. Step 2. Again, in SQL on the active database, we are going to set the max wait time column in seconds. The value here in seconds should be less than the max queue time configured in the ICM MRD. The queue ID 1001 is from our previous SQL query. Option 2 can only be used when Unified CCE scripts are linear, meaning first in, first out. What happens is the external agent assignment service checks for older activities that have not yet been assigned. If EAAS finds activities that have not yet been assigned, EAAS will requeue these activities and send a new task request. On the server running the file services, navigate to CIM, eService, Config, IPCC. Locate the EGICM_configuration.properties file and open it up. Change the FIFO_ALGO_2_save_email_enable from the current value of false to true. To configure the application path, we'll need to go into the application path filter and disable it. To access the application object filter, navigate to Configuration Manager and select Application Object Filter from the Options menu. The application filter reverts back to its default status, which is enabled each time Configuration Manager is opened. The super user password is defined during install. The default is the word password, PASSWORD. Disable the filter and select OK. We're going to create one application path. Associate this application path with the application instance that we created earlier. Select the correct agent PG where your agents are configured. Now add the application path members. You should have 4 application paths, one for each media routing domain. MRDBC for blended collab, EIM for email, outbound, and WIM for chat. Now let's take a look at our configuration checklist. In Module 1, we created our network VRU, and we configured our agent PG, and we installed and configured our media routing PG. In this module, we created our application instance, our media class, we configured our media routing domains, and we configured our application path. In Module 3, we'll discuss skill groups, agents, and device targets.